Captain Marcus Chen stared at the holographic display floating before him, his weathered face showing no emotion despite the crushing news. The blue glow of the Galactic Council's official seal flickered as the alien ambassador's words echoed through the bridge of the Earth vessel times Horizon's Edge asterisk. Your species' application for membership in the Galactic Council has been rejected, the Zeltharian ambassador had said, his four eyes blinking in what humans had learned was their equivalent of a dismissive shrug. Earth and its inhabitants are deemed too young, too primitive, and frankly, too dangerous for civilized galactic society. The transmission had ended 30 minutes ago, but Marcus still stood there, processing what this meant for humanity's future among the stars. Around him, his crew worked in tense silence. They had all heard the verdict. After 15 years of careful diplomacy, technological exchange, and proving their worth to dozens of alien species, humanity had been cast out before they could even truly join. Lieutenant Sarah Torres approached cautiously. "Captain, incoming message from Earth Command." Marcus nodded grimly. He could already imagine Admiral Harrison's reaction to this news. The old man had spent his entire career preparing humanity for this moment, believing that joining the Galactic Council would usher in a new age of prosperity and knowledge for their species. "Put it through to my ready room," Marcus said, finally turning away from the display. "And Sarah, get me a full breakdown of every species that voted against us." "Sir, with respect, that's going to be a very long list." Marcus paused at the doorway to his quarters. "How long?" "All of them, sir." The vote was unanimous. The weight of those words settled on Marcus's shoulders like a lead blanket. Not a single species had spoken in humanity's favor. Not the Zeltharians, who had been their first contact and seemed genuinely interested in human art and culture. Not the Korvan Trade Federation, who had profited enormously from human mineral exports. Not even the peaceful Nexari, who shared humanity's love of exploration and scientific discovery. In his ready room, Admiral Harrison's face appeared on the screen, his usually sharp features looking older than Marcus remembered. Behind him, the flags of Earth's unified nations hung in their familiar display, a symbol of the unity humanity had finally achieved in the face of discovering they were not alone in the universe. "Marcus, I won't lie to you. This is a disaster," the Admiral began without preamble. "The Council's rejection comes with trade sanctions, travel restrictions, and a formal warning to all member species to limit contact with humanity." "What's their reasoning?" Marcus asked, though he suspected he already knew. "The official statement cites our aggressive tendencies, our rapid technological advancement, without corresponding wisdom, and our unpredictable nature." Harrison's voice carried a bitter edge. "Unofficially, our contacts in various governments are saying the ancient species pushed hard for this decision." Marcus leaned forward. "The ancient species, the Vorthok, the Myrathians, and the Celestial Architects, were the oldest civilizations in the galaxy. Some claiming histories spanning millions of years. They held enormous influence in the Council, though they rarely participated directly in galactic politics anymore. Any idea why the ancients would care about us, one way or another? That's what worries me, Marcus. Species that old don't usually pay attention to newcomers unless there's a specific reason." Harrison paused, his expression growing more serious. "I'm ordering all human vessels to return to Sol System immediately. We need to regroup and figure out our next move." "What about the research stations? The mining operations in neutral space?" "Everything comes home, Captain. If we're being shunned by the galaxy, then we'll make our stand from Earth." After the transmission ended, Marcus remained alone with his thoughts. Humanity had come so far in such a short time. When the Zeltharians had arrived 50 years ago, humans were still fighting over resources and territories on their single world. The revelation that they were part of a vast galactic community had transformed human civilization almost overnight. Old conflicts had been set aside in favor of presenting a united front to the stars. Technology had advanced at an unprecedented rate as humans absorbed knowledge from dozens of alien cultures. The dream of exploring the galaxy and taking their place among the great civilizations had driven humanity to achievements that would have seemed impossible just decades ago. Now that dream lay in ruins. Marcus activated his ship's intercom. All hands. This is the captain. As you've probably heard by now, the Galactic Council has rejected humanity's membership application. We've been ordered to return to Earth immediately. He paused, choosing his words carefully. I know this isn't the outcome we hoped for, but we're still the same species that went from sailing wooden ships to reaching the stars in just a few centuries. This setback won't define us. The journey back to Sol System would take 3 weeks, even with their fastest drives. Marcus used the time to study everything they knew about galactic politics, and the ancient species in particular. Something didn't add up about this rejection. Humanity wasn't perfect, but they weren't uniquely violent compared to many council member species. The Corvin Federation had only joined after a brutal civil war that lasted centuries. The hegemony of Sales had been raiders and pirates before reforming their society. Even the peaceful Nexari had a history of devastating wars in their distant past, yet none of those species had faced universal rejection. What made humanity different? The answer came from an unexpected source. Dr. Elena Vasquez, the ship's xenobiologist, had been analyzing tissue samples from various alien species they'd encountered. She knocked on Marcus's door 3 days into their journey home, carrying a tablet full of genetic data. Captain, you need to see this, she said, her excitement barely contained. I've been running comparative analyses on the genetic structures of all known spacefaring species, including humans. Marcus looked at the complex charts and diagrams she showed him, understanding only fragments of the technical details. What am I looking at, Doctor? Evolutionary patterns, sir. Every species in the galaxy follows predictable genetic development paths. They evolve slowly, steadily, with clear stages of advancement that can be tracked over millions of years. She highlighted specific data points. But humans, we're different. Our genetic complexity, our neural development, our adaptability, it's all happening too fast. Too fast for what? For natural evolution, sir. Based on these patterns, humanity should have taken at least 10 times longer to reach our current level of development. We're advancing at a rate that shouldn't be possible. Marcus stared at the data, pieces of a larger puzzle beginning to fall into place. And the ancient species would know this? They'd have genetic records going back millions of years. They'd spot an anomaly like humanity immediately. Doctor, Vasquez's expression grew troubled. Captain, what if they're not rejecting us because we're too primitive? What if they're rejecting us because we're advancing too quickly? The implications of that theory followed Marcus for the remainder of their journey. If humanity's rapid development was somehow unnatural or threatening to the established order, then the rejection from the Galactic Council might be just the beginning of their problems. As the Time's Horizon's Edge Times finally entered Sol System, Marcus received a priority message from Earth Command. Admiral Harrison appeared on screen again, but this time his expression was one of confusion rather than defeat. Marcus, we've been monitoring communications across the galaxy since the rejection was announced. Something strange is happening. Multiple species are reporting unusual phenomena in their space, sensor readings they can't explain, energy signatures that don't match any known technology. What kind of phenomena? That's just it. The descriptions are inconsistent. Some report gravitational anomalies, others detect exotic radiation. A few claim their star charts are showing systems that weren't there before. Harrison leaned closer to the camera. But here's the strangest part. Every report comes from space near ancient species territories. Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. Admiral, with respect, what does this have to do with us? Maybe nothing. Maybe everything. But Marcus, these reports started appearing exactly 6 hours after the Council announced our rejection. As Earth grew larger on the view screen, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that humanity had stumbled into something much larger than a simple diplomatic rejection. The ancient species had gone to great lengths to ensure humanity remained isolated from galactic society. The question was, why? And based on the strange reports coming from across the galaxy, they might be about to find out. The Time's Horizon's Edge Times docked at Luna Station 12 hours later. As Marcus prepared to disembark, his communications officer handed him one final message. It was from an unknown source, transmitted on an encrypted channel that shouldn't have existed. The message was short. The sleepers stir. The young race has been noticed. Prepare. Marcus stared at the words. A growing certainty filling him that humanity's real test was just beginning. Whatever the ancient species feared about humanity's rapid development, it was connected to something they'd been hiding for millions of years. And now, it seemed, that something was waking up. Dr. Elena Vasquez stood in the center of the most advanced laboratory complex humanity had ever built, watching as streams of data flowed across dozens of holographic displays. 3 months had passed since the Galactic Council's rejection, and in that time, Earth scientists had worked with desperate intensity to understand the mysterious message Marcus had received. The sleepers stir had become the unofficial motto of their research project, though no one could explain what it meant. What they had discovered, however, was far more disturbing than anyone had anticipated. Elena, you need to see this, called Dr. James Park, the project's lead physicist. He was standing before a display showing energy readings from across the galaxy, collected through humanity's network of stealth observation satellites. Elena approached the display, her expression growing more concerned as she studied the patterns. These readings are getting stronger, much stronger. And look at this. James highlighted specific data points. The energy signatures are appearing in a clear pattern, spreading outward from the galactic core. Whatever's happening, it's expanding systematically. Admiral Harrison entered the laboratory at that moment, followed by Captain Chen and a woman Elena didn't recognize. The stranger was tall, elegant, with silver hair and eyes that seemed far older than her apparent age. She carried herself with the quiet authority of someone accustomed to being the smartest person in the room. Dr. Vasquez, Dr. Park, the Admiral began, I'd like you to meet Professor Catherine Wright. She's been studying ancient galactic history for the past 20 years. Working from archives the Council thought were destroyed. Professor Wright stepped forward, her gaze immediately drawn to the energy displays. May I? She asked, gesturing toward the data. Elena nodded, watching as the older woman studied the readings with obvious familiarity. You've seen this before, she said. It wasn't a question. Similar patterns, yes. About 15,000 years ago, according to the archives I've recovered. Wright turned to face the group. Tell me, have any of you heard of the Forerunners? The scientists exchanged glances. Pre-galactic civilization myths, James said slowly. Every spacefaring species has legends about ancient builders who left ruins throughout the galaxy. Not myths, Wright said quietly. The Forerunners were real. They built structures throughout the galaxy millions of years ago, then vanished without explanation. The ancient species have spent their entire existence trying to understand what happened to them. Elena felt a chill run through her. And you think these energy readings are connected to the Forerunners? I think the Forerunners never actually vanished. I think they went to sleep. Wright activated her own portable display, showing images of strange structures scattered across dozens of worlds. These aren't ruins, they're dormant installations, and based on your data, they're beginning to wake up. Admiral Harrison stepped forward. Professor, with respect, what does this have to do with humanity's rejection from the Council? Wright's expression grew grave. Admiral, in all my research, I've found only one thing that could trigger a galaxy-wide awakening of Forerunner technology. The emergence of a species with specific genetic and technological markers. A species that develops too quickly, that shows patterns the Forerunners were designed to recognize. The laboratory fell silent except for the hum of machinery. Elena was the first to speak. You're saying the Forerunners left behind some kind of monitoring system? More than that. I believe they left behind safeguards. Automatic systems designed to activate when certain conditions were met. Wright's voice dropped almost to a whisper. The ancient species know this. They've known for millions of years that someday, a young race would appear that would wake the sleeping giants. Captain Chen had been studying the energy readings over Elena's shoulder. The rejection wasn't about keeping us out of the Council. It was about preventing this awakening. Too late for that now, Wright said grimly. The patterns are already established. The Forerunner installations are activating in sequence, and once the process begins, it cannot be stopped. Over the following weeks, the situation across the galaxy deteriorated rapidly. The energy anomalies grew stronger and more frequent. Several species reported that ancient ruins on their worlds had begun exhibiting strange activity, lights appearing in structures that had been dark for millennia, inexplicable gravitational fields, and most disturbing of all, a low-frequency hum that seemed to emanate from deep underground. Humanity's observation network captured dozens of alien communications. As panic spread through the Galactic Council, the Zeltharians had evacuated 3 star systems where Forerunner installations had begun displaying aggressive energy patterns. The Corvan Federation was reporting massive disruptions to their trade routes, as space itself seemed to warp around certain ancient structures. But it was the reactions of the ancient species that truly alarmed the human researchers. The Vorthak, Myrathians, and Celestial Architects had withdrawn completely from galactic politics, recalling all their vessels and representatives to their home systems. For the first time in recorded history, the galaxy's eldest civilizations were acting afraid. Elena was analyzing the latest batch of data when her communication system chimed with an urgent priority message. The transmission was coming from outside the Sol system, but the source was moving toward Earth at impossible speed. "Admiral to the lab, emergency," she called over the intercom. Harrison arrived within minutes, along with Captain Chen and Professor Wright. "What do we have, Doctor?" "Unknown vessel approaching Sol system. It's broadcasting on frequencies we've never seen before, using technology that our sensors can barely detect." Elena brought up the tracking display. "Admiral, this ship is traveling at speeds that should be physically impossible." "How impossible?" "It's covering distances that would take our fastest ships weeks." In minutes, the vessel reached Earth's outer sensor perimeter 3 hours later. Its design was unlike anything in their databases. Organic curves blended with geometric precision. Materials that seemed to shift and flow like liquid metal while maintaining rigid structural integrity. It was beautiful and terrifying in equal measure. The ship requested permission to approach Earth directly, transmitting the request in perfect English, despite no known contact between humanity and its builders. Admiral Harrison granted the request after hasty consultations with Earth's leadership, though he kept every defensive installation in the Sol system on high alert. The vessel landed in the same field where the first Zeltharian ship had touched down 50 years earlier. As human observers watched from a safe distance, a section of the ship's hull simply faded away, revealing an opening that led into softly glowing corridors. A single figure emerged from the ship. It walked upright like a human, but stood nearly 8 feet tall. Its skin had a crystalline quality, seeming to contain swirling galaxies of light beneath the surface. It wore robes that moved independently of any wind, shifting colors that hurt to look at directly. Most unsettling of all were its eyes, ancient beyond measure, containing depths that suggested awareness spanning geological ages. The being approached the Human Reception Committee with unhurried steps, stopping exactly 10 feet away. When it spoke, its voice resonated with harmonics that seemed to come from everywhere at once. "I am Keeper Veilon, of the Forerunner Watch," it said, each word carrying weight beyond its meaning. "I have come to speak with the humans who have triggered the Great Awakening." Admiral Harrison stepped forward, his military bearing intact despite the overwhelming strangeness of the encounter. "I am Admiral Harrison, representing Earth's unified government. We don't understand what's happening." The being's crystalline features shifted in what might have been the ghost of a smile. "Of course you don't. Your species is barely past its technological infancy, yet you carry within you something that has not appeared in this galaxy for 65 million years." "What do we carry?" Elena asked, unable to contain her scientific curiosity. Keeper Veilon turned those ancient eyes toward her. "The genetic legacy of the Forerunners themselves, Dr. Vasquez. Humanity is not an independent evolution. You are their descendants, their children, awakening after an enforced slumber that has lasted since your creators withdrew from this reality." The words hit the human delegation like a physical blow. Professor Wright was the first to recover. "That's impossible. Human evolution is well documented. Our archaeological record goes back millions of years." Your archaeological record shows the history of the primitive ancestors your creators chose to seed with their genetic legacy, the keeper replied. The Forerunners did not build monuments or cities as you understand them. They built worlds. They built species. They built the very foundations upon which galactic civilization now rests. Captain Chen found his voice. Why are you telling us this now? Because the ancient species you know, the Vorthak, the Myrathians, the others, are not the galaxy's eldest children. They are the caretakers, left behind to maintain order until the true inheritors returned. The keeper's gaze swept over them all. You, humanity, are those inheritors. And your emergence means the next phase of galactic evolution is about to begin. What kind of phase? Admiral Harrison asked, though his tone suggested he wasn't sure he wanted to know. The Forerunners withdrew from this reality because they had grown beyond the need for physical existence, but they left behind contingencies, fail-safes, and most importantly, successors. The being gestured toward the humans before him. You carry their genetic template, their potential for growth, their destiny to transcend the limitations that bind other species. Elena stepped forward. The rapid development Dr. Vasquez noted in our genetics. Is your true nature asserting itself? Humanity is not advancing quickly by accident. You are remembering what you were always meant to become. The keeper's voice carried both promise and warning, but such growth brings responsibilities and dangers. What kind of dangers? Wright asked. The ancient species have built their entire civilization on the assumption that they were the galaxy's rightful rulers. Learning that they were merely temporary custodians will not sit well with many of them. Some will accept the transition gracefully. Others, the keeper paused. Others will fight to maintain the status quo, regardless of the cost. Admiral Harrison absorbed this information with the strategic mind that had served him throughout his career. Are you here to help us? Howard Hebrand. I am here to warn you. The Forerunner installations that are awakening across the galaxy will recognize humanity's genetic signature. They will offer you technologies, knowledge, and capabilities that could transform your species overnight, but such power must be claimed wisely. The Keeper's eyes grew darker. Other forces in the galaxy will not wait for you to learn wisdom. The war for galactic supremacy is about to begin, whether humanity is ready or not. As if to emphasize the point, Elena's communication device began chiming with urgent alerts. The latest reports from their observation network showed massive fleet movements throughout the galaxy. The ancient species were mobilizing their forces, while younger civilizations frantically sought shelter or chose sides in a conflict they didn't understand. The rejection from the Galactic Council, Elena realized, had been the first shot fired in a war that would reshape the galaxy. And humanity, whether they wanted it or not, was about to find themselves at the center of it all. Keeper Veilon began walking back toward his ship. Prepare your people, Admiral. The awakening cannot be stopped, but how it unfolds will depend on the choices humanity makes in the coming days. Choose wisely. The fate of not just your species, but all life in the galaxy, hangs in the balance. As the crystalline being disappeared back into his ship and the vessel lifted silently into the stars, Elena looked at the data streaming across her displays. The energy readings were spiking across hundreds of systems now, and somewhere in the depths of space, ancient machines were stirring to life after millions of years of slumber. Humanity had thought they were fighting for acceptance in galactic society. Now they discovered they might be fighting for the very survival of everything they'd ever known. The first Forerunner installation to fully activate was located in the Kepler 442 system, a region of space that had been considered empty by galactic surveys for thousands of years. When humanity's deep space sensors detected the massive energy surge emanating from the system, Admiral Harrison immediately dispatched the fastest ship in Earth's fleet to investigate. Captain Chen commanded the reconnaissance mission aboard the newly commissioned Times Pioneer's Truth *, humanity's most advanced vessel. Built in the 3 months since Keeper Veilon's warning, the ship incorporated technologies that human scientists were still struggling to understand. The innovations had come from studying the energy patterns of awakening Forerunner sites, somehow unlocking insights that allowed for breakthroughs in faster-than-light travel, energy generation, and defensive systems. It's like the knowledge was always there, waiting for us to ask the right questions. Dr. Vasquez had explained during the ship's construction. She now served as the mission's chief science officer. Her expertise in xenobiology expanded to include what they were calling Forerunner genetics. The journey to Kepler 442 took only 6 days with their new drive system, compared to what would have been months using conventional technology. As they approached the system, however, it became clear they weren't alone. Multiple contacts on long-range sensors, reported Lieutenant Torres from the navigation station. I count at least 40 vessels from various species, all maintaining position at the system's edge. Chen studied the tactical display, recognizing ship designs from dozens of different civilizations, Zeltharian exploration vessels, Corvan trade ships, even a few massive hegemony of sails warships hung in space around the system like scavengers waiting for scraps. Any signs of the ancient species? He asked. Negative, sir. Looks like everyone else is as curious as we are, but nobody wants to get too close. Chen could understand their caution. The energy readings from the system's inner planets were off the charts, suggesting power generation on a scale that dwarfed anything galactic civilization had achieved. Whatever was awakening in Kepler 442, it was enormous. Take us in, Lieutenant, but keep our defensive systems ready. As the Times Pioneer's Truth Times moved past the assembled alien fleet, Chen noticed several ships beginning to follow at a respectful distance. Apparently, humanity's reputation for reckless bravery was spreading throughout the galaxy. The source of the energy readings became apparent as they approached the system's fourth planet. What their initial scans had registered as a barren rock was revealed to be something far more extraordinary. The entire planet's surface was covered in geometric structures that stretched from pole to pole, creating patterns visible from space. Rivers of energy flowed along channels carved into the planet's crust, feeding into massive crystalline towers that pierced the atmosphere. Elena, are you seeing this? Chen asked, unable to keep the awe from his voice. Dr. Vasquez was studying her instruments with intense concentration. Marcus, this isn't just a structure. The entire planet has been converted into a machine. The geological data suggests this transformation happened over 60 million years ago. What does it do? Unknown. But the power output is equivalent to a medium-sized star. And it's definitely responding to something. She looked up from her displays with worried eyes. The energy patterns are modulating in response to our approach. It knows we're here. As if summoned by her words, a section of space near the planet's largest tower shimmered and distorted. Reality seemed to fold in on itself, creating a tunnel of twisted light that stretched toward their ship. Before Chen could order evasive maneuvers, the tunnel reached them, and the Times Pioneer's Truth Times was drawn through. The transition lasted only seconds, but Chen felt as though they had traveled across the galaxy. When normal space reasserted itself around them, they were floating inside a vast chamber carved from the planet's interior. The walls stretched away in all directions, their surfaces covered in symbols that seemed to shift and change when viewed directly. Sir, we have a problem, Torres called from her station. I'm not detecting our entry point anymore. The tunnel disappeared. Before Chen could respond, the chamber filled with a harmonious tone that resonated through the ship's hull. The symbols on the walls began to glow, and suddenly the air itself in front of them shimmered and took on a humanoid form. The figure that materialized looked almost human, but with subtle differences that marked it as something else entirely. Its features were perfectly symmetrical. Its eyes held depths that suggested vast intelligence, and when it moved, it did so with inhuman grace. Greetings, children of Earth, the figure said, its voice carrying the same harmonic qualities as Keeper Veilon's. I am Architect Prime Thane, guardian of this installation. You have come at last. Chen stepped forward, his diplomatic training taking over despite the extraordinary circumstances. We're here to understand what's happening to our galaxy. The Keeper told us we're connected to the Forerunners somehow. Connected? The figure's features shifted in what might have been amusement. You are not connected to the Forerunners, Captain Chen. You are their continuation. Their genetic and cultural inheritors, Awakened after 65 million years of guided evolution, Dr. Vasquez couldn't contain her scientific curiosity. Why did they leave? What happened to them? Thane gestured, and the chamber around them transformed. The walls became transparent, revealing the vast machinery of the planet-sized installation. But more than that, they showed glimpses of other worlds, other installations, a network of incredible scope stretching across the galaxy. The Forerunners faced a choice, Thane explained as images flowed around them. They had achieved technological transcendence, the ability to exist beyond physical matter, to explore dimensions and realities beyond your current understanding. But they also recognized that their departure would leave the galaxy vulnerable to forces that existed in those higher dimensions. The images shifted, showing creatures of living shadow and entities that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Even viewing them through the safety of the installation's records, Chen felt a primal terror at their alien malevolence. Dark things move in the spaces between realities, Thane continued. The Forerunners' presence kept them at bay, but ascending to higher existence would remove that protection. So they implemented a solution that required patience spanning geological ages. They created us, Elena whispered, understanding beginning to dawn. They selected a primitive species, your earliest ancestors, and began a careful process of genetic modification. Not obvious changes that would be detected, but subtle alterations that would guide evolution toward a specific goal. The development of a species that could inherit their responsibilities, while retaining the ability to exist in physical reality. Chen absorbed this information with growing unease. What responsibilities? To guard this galaxy against incursion from the dark dimensions, to guide the younger species toward wisdom and growth, to maintain the barriers that keep reality stable. Thane's expression grew serious. And when necessary, to fight. The chamber filled with new images, vast battles between beings of incredible power, the manipulation of space and time itself as weapons, entire star systems used as battlegrounds. Chen realized he was looking at the last war the Forerunners had fought before their departure. The ancient species you know as the Vorthok, Myrathians, and Celestial Architects were trusted with maintaining the galactic order until humanity reached maturity, Thane explained. They have done their duty for millions of years, but they were never intended to be permanent rulers. They are guardians, not inheritors. Some of them don't seem happy about stepping aside, Chen observed, thinking of the massive fleet movements their sensors had detected throughout the galaxy. Indeed, the Vorthak in particular have grown, attached to their position of authority. They view humanity's awakening as a threat to be eliminated rather than a transition to be celebrated. Thane's form began to solidify, becoming more substantial. Which brings us to why you are here, Captain. The installation around them hummed with increasing power, and Chen could feel the energy in his bones. What do you need us to do? This facility, and others like it throughout the galaxy, contain technologies and knowledge that humanity will need to fulfill their inheritance. But accessing them requires more than genetic compatibility. It requires understanding, wisdom, and most importantly, unity. Dr. Vasquez looked up from her readings. The energy patterns. They're responding to our thoughts, our emotions. This isn't just a machine, it's some kind of test. Precisely, Dr. Vasquez. The Forerunners designed these installations to activate only when humanity was ready to handle the power they contain. Unfortunately, the galaxy's current situation may force a premature awakening. As if to emphasize the point, alarms began sounding throughout the Times Pioneer's Truth asterisk. Torres quickly consulted her instruments. Sir, multiple ships dropping out of faster-than-light travel outside the system. Configuration matches Vorthak battle fleets. Chen felt his stomach drop. The Vorthok were among the most militarily advanced species in the galaxy, their technology refined over millions of years of warfare. If they had decided to prevent humanity's awakening by force, how long do we have? He asked. At current approach speed, approximately 4 hours until they reach the planet. Thane observed this exchange with ancient patience. The choice is before you, Captain. You can access this installation's full capabilities now, gaining the power to defend yourselves, but risking the consequences of using technologies you don't fully understand. Or, you can attempt to withdraw and continue humanity's development at a natural pace, hoping the Vorthok will allow you the time to grow. Chen looked around the chamber, at Dr. Vasquez frantically trying to understand alien science beyond her training, at his crew preparing for a battle they couldn't possibly win with conventional weapons. The weight of his species' future pressed down on him like a collapsing star. What are the consequences of early activation? Unknown. The Forerunners designed these tests to ensure readiness, not just capability. Bypassing them could grant you godlike power in the hands of a species still struggling with basic morality and wisdom. Thane's expression grew grave. It could create a new tyranny worse than anything the galaxy has ever seen. And if we don't activate them, the Vorthak fleet approaching this system has the power to sterilize entire worlds. They've decided that preventing humanity's awakening justifies any cost. The ancient Guardian's form began to flicker, as though the installation was preparing for some kind of transition. Choose quickly, Captain. The awakening has already begun, and it cannot be stopped. The only question is whether humanity will control it or be controlled by it. Chen closed his eyes, weighing the impossible choice. Around him, his ship hummed with alien energies, while outside, an ancient enemy approached with the intent to destroy everything humanity might become. The dreams of his species, their hopes for a place among the stars, their very survival, all of it balanced on the edge of a decision no human should have to make. When he opened his eyes, Chen saw Dr. Vasquez watching him with quiet understanding. Behind her, his crew waited for orders they trusted him to give, even though the consequences would echo across the galaxy for millions of years to come. What do we need to do to activate the installation? He asked. Thane's ancient features showed something that might have been relief, or perhaps regret. Place your hand on the central control matrix, Captain, but understand, once this process begins, there is no turning back. Humanity will become something new, something more than what you are now. And that transformation will change not just your species, but the entire galaxy. Chen walked toward the glowing crystal formation at the chamber's center, his footsteps echoing in the vast space. Behind him, he could hear Torres reporting the steady approach of the Vorthak fleet, their weapons charging for what they undoubtedly expected to be a quick and decisive victory. As his fingers touched the crystal surface, Chen felt the weight of 65 million years of preparation. The hopes of a species that had transcended physical existence, and the terrible responsibility of becoming something humanity had never been before, the guardians of galactic civilization. The installation erupted with power that dwarfed stars, and throughout the galaxy, every other Forerunner facility responded in kind. The awakening was no longer coming. It had arrived. The transformation began the instant Captain Chen's hand made contact with the crystal matrix. Energy cascaded through the Time's Pioneer's truth times like liquid lightning, rewriting the ship's systems on a fundamental level. But more than that, it rewrote the crew themselves. Dr. Elena Vasquez felt the change first, her enhanced scientific mind recognizing the alterations happening to her neural pathways. Knowledge flowed into her consciousness, not just information, but understanding of concepts that had no names in any human language. She could perceive the quantum foundations of reality, see the energy patterns that connected all living things, comprehend the mathematical relationships that governed the behavior of space and time itself. Elena, report, Chen called out, though his own voice sounded different, richer, carrying harmonic overtones that resonated with the installation's power. I'm fine, Captain. Better than fine. She looked at her hands, watching energy patterns dance beneath her skin. The installation is integrating our neural structures with Forerunner cognitive enhancements. We're becoming what they were. So, Lieutenant Torres gasped from her station. Sir, the ship, it's changing too. The Times, Pioneer's truth times, was indeed transforming around them. Hull plating flowed like liquid metal, reshaping itself into configurations that optimized energy flow and structural integrity. New systems spontaneously generated throughout the vessel. Weapons that operated on principles beyond human understanding. Shields that bent space-time to deflect attacks, and sensors that could perceive events happening on the other side of the galaxy. Vorthak fleet closing fast, Torres reported, her enhanced awareness allowing her to process tactical data with inhuman speed. 12 massive battleships, each one larger than a human city. They're charging planet-killing weapons. Chen felt the installation's knowledge flowing through him, showing him capabilities that were almost beyond comprehension. With a thought, he could manipulate gravity across light-years of space, reshape matter at the subatomic level, or tear holes in reality itself. The power was intoxicating and terrifying in equal measure. "Thane," he called to the Guardian. "How do we control this?" "The same way the Forerunners learned to control it, through wisdom earned over millennia of experience," the ancient being replied. "But you do not have millennia, Captain. You have perhaps an hour before the Vorthak fleet reaches attack position." Through the ship's transformed sensors, Chen could perceive the approaching enemy vessels with perfect clarity. Each Vorthak battleship was a masterwork of military engineering, armed with weapons that could crack continents and protected by shields that had never been breached in recorded history. Under normal circumstances, a single human vessel would have no chance against such a force, but these were no longer normal circumstances. "Sir," Torres said, her voice tight with concern, "I'm detecting massive energy buildups at Forerunner installations throughout the galaxy. It looks like they're all synchronizing with this one." Thane nodded gravely. "The awakening protocol is galaxy-wide, Captain. Every installation is coming online simultaneously. The ancient species are beginning to understand what this means." Chen accessed the installation's communication networks and immediately regretted it. Across the galaxy, panic was spreading through every civilization as impossible energies erupted from worlds that had been dormant for millions of years. The carefully maintained balance of galactic politics was collapsing as species that had never heard of the Forerunners found their territories suddenly home to incomprehensibly powerful installations. But it was the communications from the ancient species that truly alarmed him. The Myrathians were falling back to their core worlds, abandoning colonies they had maintained for eons. The celestial architects had gone completely silent, their elegant ships disappearing from sensor networks across the galaxy. And the Vorthak, "They're not just coming for us," Chen realized with growing horror. "They're mobilizing their entire civilization for war." Dr. Vasquez was studying the tactical projections flowing through their enhanced systems. "Marcus, look at their fleet compositions. These aren't just attack forces. They're carrying population seeds, industrial platforms, everything they would need to rebuild their civilization from scratch. They're planning to destroy every other spacefaring species in the galaxy," Torres whispered. "They think if they can eliminate all potential rivals before the awakening completes, they can maintain control of the remaining Forerunner installations." The scope of the Vorthak ambition was staggering. Chen could see their fleets moving throughout the galaxy, converging on the homeworlds of dozens of species. The Zeltharian system was under attack. The Corvan trade networks were being systematically destroyed. Even neutral systems that posed no threat to anyone were being targeted for annihilation. "Thane, we have to stop this," Chen said, feeling the weight of responsibility crushing down on him. "Do you, Captain?" The Forerunners faced similar choices in their time. Whether to use their power to impose order on a chaotic galaxy, or to allow freedom with all its attendant dangers. The Guardian's expression was unreadable. They chose to step back and allow younger species to find their own paths. "Are you prepared to make a different choice?" Chen looked around the transformed bridge of his ship, at his crew, who had become something more than human, at the incomprehensible energies flowing through systems that redefined the possible. The power to reshape galactic civilization was literally at his fingertips. He could stop the Vorthak War with a thought, impose peace through overwhelming force, become the benevolent dictator of a galaxy that would have no choice but to obey. The temptation was almost overwhelming. "Elena, what do your enhanced senses tell you about the other installations?" Dr. Vasquez closed her eyes, extending her perception through the network of awakening facilities. "There are others, Marcus. Other humans who've made contact with installation guardians. I can feel them awakening across the galaxy." She paused, her expression growing troubled. "But I'm also sensing something else." The installations aren't just responding to human contact. They're being activated by other species as well. What other species? I don't know. The signatures are different, older, like something that was sleeping even longer than the installations themselves. Torres suddenly tensed at her station. Sir, the Vorthak fleet is coming into weapons range. They're hailing us. Put them through. The main screen filled with the image of a Vorthak war leader, its segmented carapace scarred by centuries of battle. Its multifaceted eyes fixed on Chen with undisguised hatred. Human vessel, you will withdraw from this system immediately and submit to internment. Your species has violated galactic law by accessing forbidden technologies. Chen felt his enhanced awareness, analyzing the alien's physiological markers, reading the fear beneath its aggressive posture. What galactic law? You rejected our application to join your council, remember? The laws that have governed this galaxy since time immemorial. The young races exist at our sufferance, and we have withdrawn that sufferance. Humanity will be relocated to reservation worlds where you can be properly supervised. And if we refuse, then you will share the fate of the others who have chosen to resist. Your species will be sterilized, your worlds cleansed, and your genetic material preserved in archives as a reminder of what happens to those who reach beyond their station. The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in tense silence. Outside, the Vorthak fleet began spreading into attack formation, their massive weapons systems charging with energies that could burn continents. Captain, Thane said quietly, the choice is before you. You have the power to destroy that fleet with minimal effort. You could then proceed to eliminate the Vorthak threat throughout the galaxy, ensuring the safety of all younger species. But doing so would make humanity the dominant force in galactic civilization, by right of conquest. Chen understood the dilemma. Use the Forerunner technology to become the galaxy's protector, and humanity would become exactly what the Vorthak had been. An ancient species imposing its will on everyone else. Refuse to use it, and billions would die in the war that was already beginning. There has to be a third option, he said. Dr. Vasquez looked up from her instruments. Marcus, I'm detecting something else in the quantum background. It's faint, but it's definitely there. Some kind of massive intelligence, distributed across multiple dimensions. Her voice grew excited. I think it's the Forerunners themselves. Not dead, not gone. Just existing on a level we couldn't perceive until now. Torres was monitoring the Vorthak fleet when her eyes widened in shock. Sir, you need to see this. The enemy ships. They're stopping. On the tactical display, the massive Vorthak battleships had indeed halted their advance. But they weren't withdrawing. Instead, they hung in space as though paralyzed, their weapon systems powering down involuntarily. The main screen flickered to life without anyone activating it, showing not the Vorthak war leader but a figure that made Chen's enhanced consciousness recoil in recognition. It was humanoid but clearly not human, its features bearing the same crystalline quality as Keeper Veilon but magnified beyond any physical form. When it spoke, reality itself seemed to listen. I am Confluence Eternal, speaking for the ascended collective that you knew as the Forerunners. The being's voice carried the weight of geological ages. The awakening was not meant to happen this way, forced by fear and aggression. But since it has begun, we will see it through to its conclusion. The view shifted to show not just the Vorthak fleet, but installations throughout the galaxy. Each one was now fully active, surrounded by impossible geometries that hurt to look at directly. The time of ancient dominance is ended, Confluence Eternal continued. The Vorthak, Myrathians, and celestial architects were trusted guardians, but they have forgotten that their role was temporary. They will now be reminded. Chen felt a shift in the fabric of space itself as the Forerunner installations throughout the galaxy synchronized their operations. The Vorthak ships began to change, their hull configurations flowing into new forms that incorporated the same organic curves and energy patterns as Forerunner technology. What are you doing to them? Chen asked. What we should have done millions of years ago. Completing the integration we began with humanity, but extending it to all sapient species in the galaxy. The age of separation and conflict ends now. The Age of Unity begins. As Chen watched in amazement and growing alarm, every ship in the galaxy began transforming. Zeltharian vessels, Corvan trade ships, even the mysterious craft of the ancient species, all were being remade according to Forerunner design principles. But more than that, he could sense the minds of their crews being enhanced in the same way his own had been. "You're forcing evolution on everyone," Dr. Vasquez whispered. "We are completing a process that was always intended to culminate in this moment," the Ascended Forerunner replied. "The younger species will receive the same enhancements as humanity, while the ancient guardians will be restructured to better serve the galaxy's future." Chen realized with growing horror that the Forerunners weren't offering a choice. They were imposing their vision of galactic unity through overwhelming force, remaking every sapient species according to their design. Humanity had triggered an awakening that would transform the galaxy whether its inhabitants wanted it or not. And as the installation's power continued to build, Chen began to suspect that this transformation was only the beginning of what the Forerunners had planned. Captain Marcus Chen watched in horror as the Forerunner transformation spread across the galaxy like a cosmic infection. Through the enhanced sensors of his ship, he could perceive the forced evolution happening to billions of beings across thousands of worlds. The Ascended Forerunners were remaking galactic civilization according to their ancient design, and no one was being given a choice in the matter. "Thane," he called to the installation's guardian, "this isn't what humanity wanted. We never asked to trigger a galaxy-wide transformation." The guardian's crystalline form flickered with what might have been uncertainty. "The Ascended Collective operates on timescales beyond individual concerns, Captain. They see the ultimate outcome. A galaxy unified under their guidance, free from the conflicts that have plagued it for millions of years. Free from conflict because everyone will be forced into the same mold," Dr. Vasquez said, her enhanced perception allowing her to see the deeper implications. "They're not creating unity. They're creating uniformity." Through the quantum networks now connecting every transformed vessel and installation, Chen could feel the minds of beings throughout the galaxy as they underwent radical changes. Some adapted smoothly, their consciousness expanding to embrace concepts they had never imagined. Others fought the transformation, their personalities fragmenting under the pressure of forced evolution. The Vorthak war leader who had threatened them minutes earlier was now something entirely different. Its segmented carapace had taken on the flowing properties of Forerunner biotechnology, and when it spoke again, its voice carried harmonics that suggested vast intelligence. "I understand now," it said, though whether it was still truly Vorthak was questionable. The old conflicts seemed so petty when viewed from this expanded perspective. "Humanity, we apologize for our aggression. The collective's wisdom makes our previous positions seem childishly short-sighted." Chen felt sick hearing the emotionless certainty in what had once been a proud warrior's voice. The Vorthak leader hadn't been convinced or persuaded. It had been fundamentally altered until it could no longer hold beliefs contrary to Forerunner philosophy. "Elena, are you picking up any resistance to the transformation?" Dr. Vasquez was studying the galaxy-wide data streams flowing through their systems. "There are pockets of isolation, mostly in regions where Forerunner installations are sparse. Some species are trying to shield themselves, but the transformation wave is adaptive. It's learning from each encounter, becoming more effective at overcoming resistance." Lieutenant Torres looked up from her station with barely controlled panic. "Sir, I'm detecting transformation waves approaching Sol system. They'll reach Earth in approximately 6 hours. The implications hit Chen like a physical blow. Billions of humans, undergoing the same forced evolution he had witnessed throughout the galaxy. Children having their minds expanded beyond their ability to cope, elderly people whose consciousness couldn't survive the radical restructuring. Entire cultures erased as humanity was remade, according to Forerunner specifications. Confluence eternal." He called out to the cosmic entity. "Stop this. Humanity triggered the awakening, so we should have some say in how it proceeds." The Ascended Forerunner's attention turned to him like the focused gaze of a star. "Your species' role was to activate the protocol, Captain Chen. The implementation follows parameters established long before your ancestors developed consciousness. The transformation cannot be stopped." Can't be stopped, or won't be stopped. The distinction is irrelevant. Organic evolution has had sufficient time to prove its limitations. The galaxy is plagued by war, prejudice, and inefficiency because each species develops along random paths determined by environmental chance. True progress requires intelligent design. Chen felt his enhanced awareness showing him the scope of the Forerunners' plan. They weren't just transforming existing species. They were preparing to seed new worlds with carefully designed life forms, each one optimized for specific roles in their galactic civilization. Within a few generations, diversity would be replaced by purpose-built efficiency. This isn't progress, he said. This is the death of everything that makes life worth living. Your perspective is limited by your biological heritage, Confluence Eternal replied with the patience of eternity. When the transformation is complete, such concerns will seem as primitive as your current fears about tribal conflicts on your home world. Dr. Vasquez was frantically working at her enhanced workstation. Marcus, I think I've found something. The installations aren't just receiving power from the Ascended Collective. They're also feeding information back to them. Every mind that gets transformed provides data about that species' cognitive patterns. Chen saw where she was going with this. They're learning from each transformation, making the next one more effective. Exactly. But that also means the process is still experimental. They don't have perfect knowledge of how this will affect every species. Her eyes widened as understanding dawned. Marcus, what if we could introduce variables they haven't accounted for? Thane's form suddenly blazed with alarm. Captain, you must not interfere with the collective's work. The consequences of disrupting the transformation protocol could be catastrophic, but Chen was already seeing possibilities that his enhanced mind could barely grasp. The installation he was connected to wasn't just a passive receiver of Forerunner commands. It was an active node in their network, and as the transformation's trigger point, it held a position of special significance in their calculations. Elena, can you create a feedback loop? Something that would force the collective to pause the transformation while they analyzed unexpected data? Theoretically, yes. But Marcus, we're talking about interfering with beings who've existed for 65 million years. They've probably anticipated every possible form of resistance. Maybe, but they've been asleep for most of those years, and they're operating through installations that were designed for a galaxy that doesn't exist anymore. Chen was already interfacing with the installation's control systems, his consciousness diving deep into alien technologies. They planned for the galaxy as it was millions of years ago, not as it is today. What Chen found in the installation's deeper layers confirmed his suspicions. The transformation protocols were indeed ancient, designed for a galactic civilization that had been static and predictable. They hadn't anticipated the rapid changes that had occurred during the Forerunners' absence. The emergence of hybrid cultures, the development of technologies that blended multiple species innovations, the complex web of relationships that bound the modern galaxy together. Torres, I need you to establish communication with every human vessel in the galaxy. Emergency priority. Sir, that's going to take enormous power. We have enormous power. Do it. As Lieutenant Torres established the connections, Chen felt his consciousness expanding across light years of space, touching the minds of humans throughout the galaxy. Some had already been partially transformed by nearby installations, while others remained unchanged but terrified by the cosmic forces reshaping their universe. This is Captain Marcus Chen to all human forces, he broadcast through the network. What you're witnessing is the forced evolution of our entire species. The beings responsible believe they're helping us, but they're actually destroying everything that makes us human. Dr. Vasquez was monitoring the collective's response to his communication. Marcus, they're analyzing your transmission. The feedback patterns suggest confusion. They didn't expect organized resistance at this stage of the protocol. Chen pressed his advantage. I need every human ship to interface with the nearest Forerunner installation. Don't resist the connection, but don't surrender to it either. We're going to give the collective something they haven't seen in 65 million years. Genuine diversity. Across the galaxy, Human vessels began establishing connections with awakened installations, but instead of passively accepting transformation, they shared something the Forerunners had forgotten existed: the chaotic, unpredictable, gloriously inefficient creativity of minds that had developed through random evolution rather than intelligent design. The effect was immediate and dramatic. Installation after installation began experiencing computational errors as they tried to process the flood of incompatible data. Human minds touched by Forerunner technology began creating hybrid thoughts that followed no logical pattern but somehow achieved insights that pure logic couldn't reach. "Warning," Thane called out, his form beginning to flicker erratically. "The installation is experiencing cascade failures. The collective is losing synchronization across multiple nodes." Chen could feel it happening through his connection to the network. The rigid perfection of Forerunner calculations was being disrupted by the introduction of variables they couldn't predict or control. 65 million years of careful planning was being unraveled by the simple act of humans being human. "Confluence eternal," he called to the cosmic entity. "Your transformation is failing because you've forgotten something fundamental about life. You can't impose purpose from the outside. It has to emerge from within." "Impossible," the ascended Forerunner replied, but Chen could hear uncertainty in its voice for the first time. "Organic evolution produces chaos and conflict. Only guided development can achieve true progress. Look at the data your installations are collecting. Look at what humans are creating when we touch your technology. We're not becoming what you expected, are we?" The truth was spreading through the Forerunner network like wildfire. Humans weren't being transformed according to protocol. They were transforming the technology itself, creating hybrid systems that operated on principles the collective had never imagined. Art merged with science, emotion guided logic, and chaos somehow produced order. Throughout the galaxy, other species were beginning to notice the disruption and taking advantage of it. Zeltharian vessels were breaking free of the transformation protocol, their crews retaining their original personalities while gaining enhanced capabilities. Corvin traders were modifying Forerunner enhancements to better serve their commercial instincts. Even some Vorthak were beginning to remember what it meant to be warriors rather than empty vessels for ancient wisdom. "The transformation protocol is collapsing," Dr. Vasquez reported with growing excitement. "The collective is pulling back to reassess their strategy." Chen felt the cosmic presence of Confluence Eternal, focusing on him with the weight of a small star. "You have disrupted plans 65 million years in the making, Captain Chen. Do you comprehend what you have done?" "I've given the galaxy a choice," Chen replied. "The one thing you never offered. Choice leads to conflict. Conflict leads to destruction. We have seen this pattern repeated across countless civilizations. And yet, here we are, dozens of species working together to resist your forced unity. Maybe the pattern isn't as fixed as you think." For long moments that stretched across star systems, the Forerunner collective contemplated this new data. Chen could feel their vast intelligence wrestling with concepts they had rejected eons ago. The possibility that chaos might be a feature rather than a bug, that diversity might be strength rather than weakness. Finally, Confluence Eternal spoke again. "You propose an alternative, Captain. What would you have us do?" Chen looked around the bridge of his transformed vessel, at his crew who had become more than human while somehow remaining fundamentally themselves. "Give us the tools, but let us choose how to use them. Share your knowledge, but don't force your wisdom. Help us grow, but don't dictate our direction. And if your choices lead to the destruction we sought to prevent, then at least it will be our choice to make." The cosmic entity's presence seemed to withdraw, conferring with intelligences beyond human comprehension. When it returned, its voice carried a note that might have been respect. "The collective will experiment with your proposal. The installations will remain active, offering their capabilities to any who choose to access them. But the transformation protocol is suspended. Each species may determine its own path forward." Throughout the galaxy, the forced evolution ceased. Species that had been partially transformed found themselves with enhanced capabilities but retained free will. Those who had resisted completely remained unchanged, but could now access Forerunner technology voluntarily. Chen felt the installation's power flowing around him, no longer constraining but enabling. What about Earth? The transformation wave heading for our home system? It has been redirected. Your species will receive the same choice as all others. Accept our gifts or decline them, but face the consequences of either decision with the wisdom you possess. As the immediate crisis passed, Chen began to grasp the magnitude of what had occurred. Humanity hadn't just avoided forced transformation. They had fundamentally altered the relationship between the galaxy's ancient guardians and its younger species. The age of imposed order was ending, replaced by something messier but ultimately more honest. "Captain," Torres called out, "I'm receiving communications from across the galaxy. Multiple species are requesting diplomatic contact with Earth. They want to know how we resisted the Forerunners." Chen smiled, feeling the weight of cosmic responsibility settling onto human shoulders not as a burden but as an opportunity. "Tell them we didn't resist the Forerunners, Lieutenant. We convinced them to remember what they used to be before they forgot how to be alive." The galaxy stretched out before them, no longer divided between ancient rulers and subject species but united in the chaotic, unpredictable, gloriously diverse process of choosing their own destinies. It wouldn't be easy, and there would undoubtedly be conflicts and mistakes along the way, but for the first time in 65 million years, the galaxy belonged to those who lived in it, rather than those who sought to control it. And humanity, the species that had been shunned and rejected, had given that gift to everyone.